What is up, people of Westeros? Welcome to my House of the Dragon, episode 4, recap, breakdown, and review. I apologize that I didn't get a video up last week. I've been in the process of moving to this new place. I think that I might not be here for episode 5, so I do apologize if any of you are enjoying these breakdown videos, but I will be playing catch up. Don't worry about that. But today's episode, episode 4, it went places that a few of us knew it was going to go, but for me, I didn't expect it quite so soon. But at the same time, it's not majorly surprising given the time jumps between each episode. That's just going to progressively keep happening up until the point of where we even get new actors for Rhaenyra and whatnot. And as usual with this episode, the family drama escalated quite a lot to the levels of escalation that I don't think should be happening, but that's Targaryens for you. But either way, this episode picked up with Rhaenyra having her pick of men, if you will, from that of the realm, trying to take her hand in marriage, because as we know, this would only serve the Targaryen crown if she even united with a certain house that could just bolster and just protect the way it's being seen as vulnerable at the minute. But this was quite funny at the beginning because you had a guy older than her father Viserys, and then you had a kid come up. And speaking of that kid, we had all of the other guys just taking the piss out of him, and then he completely decimated that particular guy through shoving a sword right through his abdomen, which was pretty entertaining. I love how it's not exactly out of the ordinary. I love how you can kind of just do that. I don't know what repercussions this would mean between those houses, because you have to think that kid from the Blackwoods just killed another man of whom I'm sure is fairly important to another house. So would this start a little house war? But not only that, we have Rhaenyra ending her tour abruptly 2 months earlier, and this is going to piss off the king because obviously he's been quite patient with her. He's also given her the ability to choose. But as this was happening, we get someone else returning, and that is when a dragon just swept past the boat, knocking Rhaenyra's head, and that is Prince Daemon Targaryen returning. And it's been a little while since Daemon has returned, and I like the way this episode poised him up to be somewhat changed, even though we find out he's kind of still the same old Daemon. He comes wearing a crown and also short hair. Do I miss the old hair or not? I know some people were taking the piss out of the wigs, but I didn't think they were that bad. I think just long, white, thin, straight Targaryen hair looks weird on any actor, especially Matt Smith. I kind of dig it, but I still don't know what I prefer more. Let me know your preference down in the comments below. Daemon throws down, I believe, Kragas Drehar's weapon, saying add it to the chair. He was wearing a crown, and they said that once they smashed the Triarchy, they named him King of the Narrow Sea, but he offers the crown to his brother, and it seems like everything is being done very much so to get his brother's goodwill back. But as they get into in the behind the scenes, really this episode, he's trying to get back at his brother in a way, and that's how Rhaenyra becomes the somewhat apple of his eye. And even why later on he goes on to not even say that, hey, I didn't do that with Rhaenyra, but he just wanted his brother to think that. Now at this point in the episode, they're having a little bit of a garden party almost, and everything seems alright. If only things could be like this permanently, even though Daemon was somewhat acting a certain way. We also have Alicent and Rhaenyra talk about a few things, and they seem to be getting a little bit closer together, even holding hands by the end of that conversation. But one of the lines in particular really describes Lady Alicent, or should I say Queen Alicent's situation, with how they were discussing Rhaenyra choosing between certain lords of the realm. And Rhaenyra replied something with regards to, they only want me for my offspring, but not only that, she wouldn't like to be just locked up in a castle squeezing out heirs as a prisoner or something like that. And that's exactly somewhat Queen Alicent's situation, and that reflects very much so in those scenes later where she's just looking very dead-eyed, if you know what I mean. With regards to what scene, I have to be careful with regards to monetization in this video. As you know, YouTube are extremely strict, but also she's very lonely. We had other scenes in this episode where she's just looking out the window. She said to Rhaenyra, I seem to have not many friends as of late, because obviously as the queen, people look at her a different way, but also she doesn't really have too much of a life, and I think she's starting to really realize, even though it's been quite a few years now, that this is her duty and life as a queen. Not only lonely, but also pop out heirs when you can, and I'd be there for your freaking husband when he's bathing in the bath to help his little scabby wounds. Of which reminds me, later on, we did see a few more of those blisters, if you will, or whatever's going on with Viserys. Now, there is a little bit more of a clue of this in the promo for next episode, but I'm going to save it till then, for those of you who don't want any kind of preview. But it does seem as though they are slowly but surely weaving that in, because I was wondering about it. It felt like we hadn't had any update with regards to the king's lack of healing in a little while, but they are now certainly reminding us of how that is continuing. And we had another small council meeting in this episode, and they said that ever since the victory at the Stepstones, it seems that they've traded a crab feeder for a sea snake. And that's because Lord Corlys is somewhat, rising up a little bit, and obviously things haven't ended well ever since the King Viserys got rid of the offer of Lady Rhaenyra for Lady Alicent. And the Hand of the King, Lord Hightower, also said in this moment that he is engaged in negotiations with the Sea Lord of Braavos, and that Lord Corlys plans to wed his daughter Lady Rhaenyra to the Sea Lord's son, of which, as we find out much later on in the episode, that to avoid this, King Viserys, after the activities Daemon and Rhaenyra got up to, is now not really giving her a choice anymore, saying you're going to marry Sir Laenor Valeryian, the Sea Snake's son, and that way both their houses will be united. And, not only that, with their combined dragons, fleet, it will be quite a Targaryen rule, unmatched since maybe even the old days of Valyria. And so, this is where that part of the episode begins. We have Rhaenyra back in her chamber, Sir Criston Cole outside, and oh boy, there's stuff going ahead for him much later on in the episode. But Rhaenyra gets back, there's a bag of rags left behind for a little disguise for Rhaenyra. There's a little map left behind from Daemon, leading her to a secret passageway that takes her to the dungeons, if you will, where the skull of Balerion the Black Dread is, and that leads her to Daemon, who's cloaked up. And initially, I didn't necessarily expect it to go to the depths of where it was going to go. I know what happens between them in the source material. I just thought that they were going to get a little bit closer. He wanted to show her the town, because that's the way they initially showed this. You saw various people doing like magic tricks or spitting fire and various other bits and pieces of the streets of King's Landing. So it felt a little bit innocent at first, but with Daemon, there's always something else on his mind. And that's when they attend a play as well, and where Rhaenyra gets to see what the people of King's Landing also think about Rhaenyra being the heir. Would she make a powerful queen, or would she be feeble? And a lot of the people are shouting feeble, and we even have Rhaenyra being like, no, slander. But then, of course, they bring up Aegon. He has two things perhaps Rhaenyra has not, one of them being a conqueror's name, and the fact that he is a male heir, of which the realm, and as Daemon points out, that the people, the common folk, have also learned to believe that as a male, Aegon should be the heir over that of Rhaenyra, which is what also will be a very interesting storyline, a Dance of Dragons between Rhaenyra and Aegon in the future, and I can't wait for that aspect of this show. This is where things start to get sketchy. Rhaenyra steals a bit of food on the streets. Daemon pretends to chase her in pursuit of her, but she runs into a guard. He seems to let her off, but this is a bit of foreshadowing for them getting ousted a little bit later. And this is where Daemon takes her to a place where, how do I put this, where there's a little bit of exotic dancing. As soon as Daemon took her hat off, I thought, oh, okay, why would you be that silly? As described by Lord Hightower later on, they went right into the bowels of the brothel, and literally anyone could recognize them. Not only that kid that obviously was the spy a little bit later on, but also she was getting looked at by multiple people. As we get deeper into this scene, we have some lines from Daemon saying it's a place where people can take what they want. Marriage is a duty, yes, but that doesn't stop us from doing what we want. And this continues to develop between them both. Now, as they get in the behind the scenes, the showrunners say that they do clearly have a chemistry with what was set up in that first episode when he gifted her that necklace, for example. She's always been fond of him, as we've seen throughout the episodes as well. But also, as Lady, I keep forgetting that she's queen now, Alicent says, you Targaryens and your queer customs, it's not exactly the most unsurprising thing between that of the Targaryen family. I mean, even Viserys' wife, who died in that first episode, was his cousin, for example. Ultimately, when things progress, and Rhaenyra definitely wanted them to progress. Daemon seems to stop himself and he walks out, as they get into in the behind the scenes as well. They mention that deep down he knows what he's doing is wrong. Even though there was somewhat of an ulterior motive here, I guess that's already been accomplished. You know, when he leaves, the kid spots Rhaenyra, who goes after him, and he informs Lord Hightower, which we'll get into in just a second. But as Rhaenyra also returns home, that's when, you know, it made me laugh. So Kristen Cole was like, wait, what? Princess? Like, how did she slip past me? Now, this is another thing that a lot of fans knew was coming as well, with somewhat of a love triangle with Daemon, Rhaenyra, and Sir Kristen Cole. She basically traps him in the room, takes his helmet, and basically persuades him to take things to the next level, which, you know, there was some interesting aspect about this for me, because, you know, when he put his cloak down, it's like he was saying a few words to it, likely just apologizing to his own vow that he took, I guess, you know, for chastity. But he was like, right, I said my words, right, let's carry on. And that's when they, I guess, had a good time. Now, there's a few things going on here. Once again, to reference the behind the scenes, Daemon somewhat introduced her to, or awakened this idea of how there is, you know, there's pleasure in that area of things. And when she got back, after Daemon somewhat took off, there's Kristen Cole there, of whom she probably most certainly likes the look of at the same time. But also there's the other thing at play with how she wants to be able to do what she wants. Even in that conversation with her father later, if I was born a male, you know, I could bed who I wanted, could have fathered a dozen bastards and whatnot. And he's like, you're right, but that's not the way of things. So I guess this is her way of, whilst there's this impending marriage coming that she knows she can't avoid, she still wants to do whatever she wants to do. So she quite literally takes that for herself. This is where the Hand of the King, Lord Hightower, had a very awkward job, because he's informed from that little kid spy. Again, to reference the behind the scenes here, there is an opportunity here for him, because he wants nothing more. There's a bit of a multifaceted thing about Lord Hightower. I do believe he really likes the king. But at the same time, there is no secret that he wanted his daughter to be queen. And as a result, he wants his grandson, Aegon, who has the freaking conqueror's name, Aegon, to be the king, the future king. So this is an opportunity here. A little bit of a Game of Thrones, if you will, between Rhaenyra and Otto, for him to ruin that chance for her as heir. Now, as we know, it doesn't exactly turn out the way he wants, especially with the Hand of the King position being taken away from him. And that's what I mean by the Game of Thrones to it all, because we have Rhaenyra basically coming to the conclusion, oh, whose spies could this have been? Yes, I technically did do something with someone, but not with the person you think, even though we need to acknowledge that she easily would have. But either way, a little bit of a battle between Rhaenyra and Otto behind the scenes here. And also Viserys just really being flabbergasted by this, and also seeing that despite, and this is what I liked about all of this kind of subtext between these scenes, despite Viserys knowing that Otto has been very loyal, very handy, taught him to become a king, has had his best interests at heart even in recent days, even up until this day technically, he knows that he wants to take this opportunity for disgracing Rhaenyra's name as heir, so Aegon Targaryen can be the new heir. And Viserys does realize that in that conversation that he has with his daughter Rhaenyra a little bit later in the episode when they finally address things. This was the same scene as well, in where she came into his chambers, and we have the dagger there, which was in the fire, a little bit like Lord of the Rings. It reveals the prophecy of the prince that was promised, and his will be the Song of Ice and Fire, which, as we know, later on will be Aegon, as in Jon Snow. I also like how when Kristen came into the room to inform Rhaenyra about how the Queen has summoned her, he was just, he couldn't even look her in the eyes. It was so awkward. And she was like, come over, you know, because I guess she felt a bit more personable with him. But no, she needed to go see the Queen. And I do like how Queen Alicent does seem to have her back in a way, because not only is she lonely, she's thrust into this new position. They get into this in the behind the scenes as well. Like, believe it or not, it wasn't really her ulterior motive or anything, what she was doing back in the first episode, the second episode, getting to know the king in the way she did. Like, she didn't deliberately orchestrate this. She became queen subsequently, if that makes sense. So that friendship that's been unintentionally destroyed between Rhaenyra and Alicent is very much so a sad thing for her. And then there's this, her hearing her father when Hightower was telling the king that she was hiding in the background. She's pretty shocked about this. Also, she knew what her father was doing. The actor behind Alicent in the behind the scenes says that she was quite disappointed in her father with regards to overhearing that. And I felt kind of bad for her as well, because Rhaenyra was obviously lying here. She was technically telling the truth because she didn't do anything all the way with Daemon, but she has been technically, as Queen Alicent put it, sullied by Sir Criston Cole. And as she says herself, have you any idea if that lord were to think you'd been sullied, it would ruin everything. So I wonder if that's going to be a little bit of a future plot as well. For example, to whom she's going to get married to, the Sea Snake's son. Is he going to realize that she's been sullied, and will that create some drama there through the deception of, you know, Rhaenyra and the king knowing that she may have done something, and yet still organizing a marriage to the Sea Snake's son under the pretense of that her virtue is still intact? I don't know. But also I feel a little bit with regards to Alicent, with everything I said before in mind, you know, how things have just led to where they are and how they were once great friends, but kind of outside of her control. She's now queen. In the future as well, with her son Aegon, and the drama between Aegon and Rhaenyra, and what will happen there. It's just going to further complicate the love that these two have for each other, the friendship that they have. Then we have Daemon, completely hungover, brought into the throne room. As we briefly spoke about earlier, he was confronted by the dragon. The dragon came out in Viserys here, and he didn't even try to deny it, even though, as we mentioned, nothing went all the way between Rhaenyra and Daemon. This is a way to kind of have a little bit of a dunk on his brother. I also like that conversation that happens between Alicent and King Viserys later. The king is aware of this, and how, what would this lie, or, you know, confessing, how would that serve him? And Alicent said, by reducing you. So even though he's still kind of low-key worried something happened, he is aware that Daemon is Daemon, and even if nothing happened, he would still pretend that something happened, as he did in that conversation, because it would be a way to reduce his brother. And then at the end of the episode, we have that Maester come in and give Rhaenyra a tea from the king, and it's intended to obviously get rid of any unwanted consequences, which goes to show that the king is still low-key worried that something did transpire between Daemon and Rhaenyra all the way, but he can't be sure. So overall, this episode, before we get to the promo very briefly, I enjoyed it. It was a bit more of a straightforward episode. This felt like the bridge between the previous episode and what's coming very much so next. It felt like the arcs have been very much so galvanized for Rhaenyra, Daemon, because obviously he's been banished again. Otto is no longer Hand of the King. The wedding is on its way. Things are very much so on the precipice of that next chapter before, for example, we get the new, older actor for Rhaenyra. So this definitely sowed those seeds in an interesting way. I mean, sure, there wasn't like tons of action in this episode, or this, that, or like mad moments. I mean, technically maybe mad to those who really didn't see any Daemon and Rhaenyra stuff coming. So I thought it was a decent episode of House of the Dragon, but once again, felt more like a bridge to serve as a brink of the precipice of what is to come. So let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below. But for those who want to stick around for the promo, things, as I said, are very much so gearing up, because the promo picks up with the lines of, "I wish to propose a marriage to my daughter and heir, a royal wedding." And Viserys talks about a hope to herald in a second age of dragons. We have Lord Corlys's wife, Rhaenys, talking about how Rhaenyra's succession will be challenged. Knives will come out, and we very much so see that in this promo at the feast. It looks like there is quite literally a mosh pit of knives and battle going on. It looks like at one point even Rhaenyra could be in danger. We see Sir Criston Cole beating the living crap out of someone in that same room. But also one of the more interesting aspects is when Lord Hightower, no longer Hand of the King, says, I think to his daughter Queen Alicent, the king will die, and if Rhaenyra succeeds him, war will follow. Prepare Aegon to rule. Now I think at this point, it seems as though Lord Hightower is returning back to his home, Alicent's home, away from King's Landing, and he is leaving her. So she's no longer got the comfort of his guidance anymore, which is why she looks so devastated in this shot. And it's now down to her to raise Aegon in becoming the king, because I think now she's had more of a controversial responsibility put onto her in how the once best friend that she wants back more than anything else, she's now tasked with making sure that she needs to work against that and her son needs to be prepared to rule, like no matter what, from her father. So that's a very awkward position, especially when Lady Alicent doesn't, as I've been over, seem like a diabolical planner likened to that of Prince Daemon. Now, I'm not sure if that line of the king will die means like he's gonna die soon because something's happened, or just, when the king eventually dies, if Rhaenyra was to succeed him, war will follow. And I ask this because we do have that moment in the trailer where the king is in his chambers, laying back in the chair. Now, he could just be laying back with his arm out and not dead, but he is just laying there very, very still. I don't think they would give that away in the promo. We have some maces watching over him. But interestingly here, and this could be quite another bit of a time jump leading up to the royal wedding, his whole arm now seems to be covered in something. Now, maybe this is going to bring back the grayscale speculation from fans, or it could just be that those sores that we've been seeing, those blistery kind of looking wounds, have now like amassed all around his arm. I'm not sure. It looks like the whole freaking skin has been peeled off his arm. So the end of King Viserys Targaryen could be coming much, much sooner than we think. This is what I mean about this episode that we're reviewing now to be a bit of a bridge, because the next episode looks like it's really picking up the momentum, and after that it's only going to have more of a snowball effect, because if the king starts to wane away and Rhaenyra is that much closer to the throne, as Otto says to Alicent, war will come. Things most certainly look like they're going to get crazy. In the promo as well, it looks like we saw Daemon returning back to his wife, and it looks like he knocked someone off their horse as well. It's very, very fast-paced in the promo, but I wonder what drama there's going to be for Daemon next episode. But overall, let me know your thoughts on this episode, but any theories that you have for next episode as well, let me know down in the comments below. If you like this video, guys, I would really appreciate a like on it. I do apologize for some missing House of the Dragon videos last week and maybe this upcoming week as I am going away. There's just no way for me to cover it, but I will be talking about it briefly in live streams and whatnot, and then we'll be back on track for the rest of the season. As always, links are in the description down below if you want to follow me a little bit more. Check out some of my other videos recently. But until then, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you fellow people of Westeros in the next video. Goodbye.